Kettering is one of the top STEM institutions in the country, and there was an interesting thing that came out recently let's see, what was it? It was having a senior moment. I think it was The Economist pardon? It was The Economist, did a multi-year study of inventive people, inventive institutions. It was interesting. They went and they said, okay, we have all these measures of universities for different kinds of inputs to the inputs, but let's look at what comes out of the university and what people go on to do after they graduate from the institution. And they looked at the number of inventors. Did you guys know about that? They looked at the number of inventors produced by the university, the number of patents that came out of graduates of the institution and whatnot. And then they ranked the United States, the universities of the United States, in terms of inventors and the creativity, if you will, of the graduates and what they went to go on to do in their careers. And in that list, I got a call one day from one of the senior reporters at The Economist, and he said, we were all sitting around talking about this study, and we were looking at the results. And we understand why Caltech is number one, and we understand why MIT is number two. But Kettering University is number 4 in the United States? Why is that? And I said, well, how long you got? I can tell you exactly why that is. It's because of the nature of the education that we provide and the type of curriculum that we have and the fact that we tie experience and hands-on application of knowledge to the acquisition of knowledge in a way that no other university in the United States does. And it's interesting. When I was talking to him, I said, our namesake, Charles Kettering, had a great way of putting it, which I'm going to butcher my paraphrasing of his remarks. But he said something to the effect of, if we taught musicians the way that we teach engineers in this country, we would make them take 12 years of music theory before we ever let them touch an instrument. And there's a lot of profound truth in that statement, because what he was saying is that the true learning comes with the combination, the virtuous circle that comes from treating both the practice of an art or a discipline and the acquisition of knowledge as equals. Not that the practice is some afterthought that comes later, but it's integral to the education. And that's one of the things that's unique, truly unique about the education at Kettering, is that the students get to experience this rotation from their very first year on campus. And it's also why Kettering and FIRST Robotics are so well matched, because so many of the students that are involved in FIRST have that very same inclination. They want to do as well as to learn. They want to learn through doing, and that's what we are all about at Kettering. So Kettering has long been a major supporter of FIRST Robotics. In fact, we were one of the very first, one of the very first universities in the United States to actually begin to award scholarships. Bob Nichols is our director of our FIRST Center at Kettering, and one of the very first universities in the United States to award scholarships. And in fact, we were the third university in the U.S. to start to award scholarships to FIRST students, and have awarded over $3 million in scholarships to students involved in the FIRST Robotics program. And in 2015, we opened the FIRST Robotics Center. Well, that's not it. That's the district competition at Kettering, which we hold. We have the only double district competition in the country now. Isn't that right? We have on two successive weekends, we have district tournaments. I think we had this year something close to 80 teams on campus. Is that right? Over the 2 weekends in a double district. But in 2015, we opened our FIRST Robotics Community Center, which is a dedicated facility, the first of its kind in the country, tied directly on a university campus, dedicated to housing 8 teams from our area permanently in a year-round FIRST activities on campus. And it also gives our current students who may have been in FIRST and have come through and now go off to college, gives them a way to keep engaged in FIRST and to give back through mentoring the teams and promoting FIRST through that facility. It's really been a jewel on the governor of Michigan recently, who's co-chair, I think, this year, this competition, as well as one of our distinguished alumna, Mary Barra, whose office is about half a quarter mile that way, down at the top of one of those buildings, CEO of General Motors. The governor of Michigan called our FIRST Center the best place in the world for FIRST robotics students. We were very proud of that. And so today, we just wanted to have an open conversation. And I'm joined today by three of our students. Well, two of our students, one student entering, third generation, yes? Oh my gosh, third generation Kettering Bulldog. Let's start with you, Tori. Okay, Tori Bradburn. Do you remember Metal Muscle?
Yeah, so I'm from Metal Muscle, so we're the team that kind of like started the idea of the community center. So like we had this mentor, Dot K, who's been a part of Kettering forever. But so we together with him came up with the idea of the first robotics center, and Kettering made it happen. And so I'm the first class that's actually gone through the first center the entire time. So like since it's 4 years old, I'm a senior. My entire high school and first career was all throughout the center. So my entire experience has been this like cooperative, getting with other teams. So like first is already such a high stakes like group effort thing, and the community center just amps it up so much because you're constantly surrounded by other teams. So not only do you have to bounce your ideas off 30 other kids on your team, but on top of that, you have a bunch of other people that you're working with all the time. So you're constantly having drive practices with other teams. You're constantly bouncing design ideas off other teams. You're constantly showing your work on the field to other people. You're constantly having your ideas challenged. And so it really just makes better robots, pretty much. But yeah.
Also on our panel, Mickey Gunther, who's a current student. She's freshman, first year?
Freshman two.
Freshman two, yeah. And we have, and she's in one of our most grueling degree programs, but the ME, the Mechanical Engineering, Electrical Engineering double major.
Also known as the suicide major, just by colloquial terms. That's
But we do not officially call it that.
just all the students do.
We call it an ME double degree program, and it's a tremendous program. But some of our most distinguished graduates have actually come through that program.
It's a lot of work, but with having my first robotics background, I am also from Metal Muscle for a year. I wasn't on that team the whole time I was in high school, but every different team I was on, I always learned more. And I think every team came to the First Center at some point to work on robots, have practice matches with other teams there. I remember going in practice matches head-to-head against Metal Muscle a couple of times without bumpers, and that's scary. You just got to be real careful. But it was really an interesting time because you get to see my teams were not, besides Metal Muscle, was not one that was housed within the center. So going into that kind of setting of teams, it's really interesting how welcoming they are to, I guess you'd call them outside teams or teams that are not of the center. Very welcoming, like we're all family in First, and the center just does such a good job of really showing that off to everyone.
Now, talk about how, not existing, so now Tori, you can talk about this because you recently, one of the things that distinguishes the program is our students actually identify a cooperative partner very early on and start to begin the application of their design. Now, Tori, you just got your placement. You're not even officially matriculated at the university, and you already have a position as a biomechanical engineer. Is that right?
Yeah.
For Baxter.
Mm-hmm.
At what may I ask you your age?
I'm 17.
She's 17. She has a position as a biomechanical engineer at Baxter as part of her education, which is phenomenal. Congratulations. I know you worked hard to achieve that.
Yeah, so like my company, I went up and talked to them, and they were like, wait, you're a freshman? I was like, yeah, like an incoming freshman. And they were like, we never hire freshmen. We never even like talk to freshmen. But they said because of my first experience that they would give me an interview, and then they ended up they told me during my interview, they were like, we'll probably won't even bring you on until January, go through a term, and then we'll bring you on once you know more. And then they called me up when I was actually on my way to a comp, but they were like, actually, just kidding, you could come work this summer.
It's an incredible, but it's a story that you hear frequently. And Mickey, what's your experience?
My first co-op term, I'm B section, so last summer was my first co-op term. I was also 17 at the time. And when you're 17 and you're gonna move 300 miles away from your family to a different state to work for a company, you learn a lot, like very quickly. You end up having to be an adult before you're even 18. And I worked the first company I worked for was Delphi, which, as you all know, is a pretty big sponsor of FIRST Robotics. So I'm sure there's some teams in the room that probably have Delphi sponsorships because they like to do that a lot. But that was my first co-op term was out there, living in an apartment with like 5 friends that also had co-ops at Delphi. And through that, it was very interesting to see just how fast-paced Kettering can take you and how quickly they can advance you into a whole different realm of possibilities than you would ever expect them to be able to. It's kind of surreal at first, and then you go to your next term, which is school term, and you have finals, and you get a wake-up call again. We're almost in midterms right now, and it's terrifying.
And
So we're
finally,
staying.
in the red cave, okay, Kevin Melendorf. Now, Kevin, you're a senior 3, so you're at the,
I actually finished classes in December.
okay, so you're a senior 4. That's an interesting side joke.
Yeah,
No, you're
I'm
doing
fi-
your thesis,
I'm
right?
finishing my thesis right
Right.
now. Once I finish that, in the next couple days, I will be hitting the gong and be officially a graduate for Kettering University. My first robotics is why I'm here, or why I went through Kettering.
You're a mentor for Pyrotech, right?
Yes, a team from North Carolina, 3459, and I got to go to Worlds my rookie year in 2011, and then Worlds in 2013. And I like to hang around the Kettering table at Worlds in 2013, and it got me where I am here. Robotics was why I like engineering and why I wanted to continue doing that and enjoy volunteering. I was also interested in Kettering because of the whole co-op program and how connected everything is, from work, practice to school. I went to 2 different co-ops, Lord Corporation, where I worked on aerospace components, and Harman International, where I did automotive audio, both of those for 2 years. And now I have a job that I'm starting in a week or so at Kratos Analytical, with about 80% travel in the US for my job, fixing X-ray photoelectron spectrometer machines.
Excellent. You're going to be in England soon.
Yes, I'm going to be over in Manchester, UK for 2 or 3 months for training.
No, it's interesting, the ringing of the bell, for those that are familiar, but 100% of our students do a senior thesis, and they do it in collaboration with their co-op employer and a faculty member on the campus. And so it provides them with a capstone experience that ties these things together. God, it's the stories that you hear are pretty consistent. And I always say when I'm talking publicly that the placement rate for our students graduating from the university vacillates wildly between 99 and 100% every year, because of this level of experience. And we see it both in your experience, Tori, with Baxter, and being able to do that. And Mickey, it's interesting. I talk to a lot of parents who say, sending a 17-year-old off to work in a cooperative, is this possible? Is this possible? And I always answer, I said, we've been doing it for 100 years, and we're pretty good at it. It is, not only is it possible, but it's incredibly powerful as a model. So let's talk a little bit about your experience at FIRST. Would that be good? How did you become involved with FIRST? Take away.
So I go the farthest back here. So I started watching FIRST Robotics in 2004. That is 14 years of watching robots compete. There is, minus Houston last week and current competitions going on, there is not a single second of official documented footage of FRC competitions I have not seen. I am very dedicated to robotics. And then actually getting to start competing in 2013 was my rookie year. I was in 8th grade at the time, and it was Ultimate Ascent, I believe was the game. Can I get confirmation? Okay, cool. A long time ago. And from there, it took me until my freshman year at Midland, where I won my first, I didn't win my blue banner, but I got a red band medallion, so I was a finalist. And then 3 years later, as a senior, I go back to Midland, get that blue banner. First and only blue banner I ever won, but honestly, one of the proudest moments of my life. Definitely wrote a paper or two about it, because it was such a great moment. And through all that time, always having Kettering kickoff, Kettering off-season events, Kettering everything, because every team I was on was either right down the road from Kettering or housed in the building. Seeing what they did for STEM and how they could open doors for teams of really any ranking was really amazing to just be able to be a part of that, compete with them, and overall make everyone better. And then actually that accumulated in me getting the first robotics scholarship for Kettering University, and that is also a huge highlight.
Outstanding.
And I'm-
Now, you're third generation Kettering football.
Yeah, so my mom's dad went to Kettering, and then my dad also went to Kettering. But before my best friend and her dad dragged me onto my team, I wanted to be a journalist, and then I realized I hated writing, so that wasn't going to work out. But
Not an auspicious start to
No.
journalism career, no.
yeah, so I essentially lived at their house pretty much all the time. And then they were like, oh, you should come try robotics. Like, it'll be fun. Like, you know how, like, you dragged me into Girl Scouts. It's not the same thing. Yeah, and I got the speech of, oh, we just meet on the weekends, you know? I'm there every day, so that's a little lie. But this is just turning into a roast, censure front row. But
We
But-
do love you.
yeah, we do love you. But yeah, essentially, if I wasn't dragged on this team, I would probably be going to some college anywhere else, majoring in journalism, go to school for 4 years, get out and realized I hated what I'm doing. But because of robotics, I got to get my hands on a robot and realize I actually like building things, I actually like designing things, I actually like figuring things out. So if it weren't for robotics, I wouldn't be at Kettering, I wouldn't have gotten my job, I wouldn't have my best friends now. So, yeah, it pretty much gave me everything.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Now, you're from North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah. No, it's
we share barbecue heritage.
it's a little bit different than Michigan. The first year there was any competition in North Carolina was 2010 of Breakaway, and I believe it was that one. And I wasn't on a team then. There wasn't any startup ones that I could join. I just volunteered with my mom and a bunch of other friends. My soon-to-be coach for the team that I was a rookie on was the volunteer coordinator. So I got to see a lot of the field and everything, including being kind of like field reset scorekeeper, because they weren't quite good with the electronics there, because it was the first competition that North Carolina had ever had. The next year, I joined complete rookie team. We had 12 students and like 6 or 7 mentors. Everyone was a rookie for first. None of us had ever done anything before. It was a crazy time, and somehow we managed to win Rookie All-Star because we liked a little bit of outreach, and a lot of the team was homeschooled, as am I, so we had the ability to go to libraries and schools during the day, so it's always been a push the STEM for everywhere. The second year, our coach won Woody Flowers Award, which was a fantastic thing for her. And then my third and final year, engineering inspirations for my team to take us to Worlds for the second time. And while we've never really had the robot to compete with the Michigan teams, or any of the other good ones, it's always been a blast to me, and seeing a sport where everyone can go professional and where it's not a cutthroat competition as much as many of the sports are. It's a cooperative learning experience, and straight up got me interested in engineering and why I'm a few days away from being a graduate with an electrical engineering degree.
So So, yeah, my first experience with FIRST, I was a first Lego League coach for a number of years. And I remember the first time I ever walked into a FIRST competition, the first Lego League, and I walked into it was in North Carolina. It was in Greensboro at the Coliseum. And it was, and I walked into the room and I was just bowled over by what I was seeing. I'd never seen anything like it, the energy, the excitement. I said, now this is the ticket right here. We had 3,000 kids, sixth graders jazzed about programming and robots and technology. I said, this is the way. So tell me, how did this prepare you for, now Tori, you can't answer this yet. You will be able to, but how did FIRST as an experience prepare you for your experience at Kettering? For college life and what you've been faced there? Because Kettering is a pretty grueling program in terms of, it's pretty demanding.
Mm-hmm.
So how did your experience at FIRST prepare you for that?
Well, Tori, one day you'll get to answer this. It's okay. Robotics really teaches you some very important life lessons that honestly I feel it's better to learn before you're in any professional setting. Through robotics, I learned how to be best friends with my competition, which is something very important for workplaces because everyone's always fighting for getting that promotion, getting that cool project, and you still have to be friends with them at the end of the day. So you learn that through FIRST. You learn gracious professionalism for when you don't get the really cool project. And overall, you learn ways to be innovative beyond like most people's thoughts and how they would kind of attack a problem. There was one project I was doing for one of the companies I worked for that was automation of lines that were mostly manual, so production lines. And through FIRST, I had the idea to, rather than do what the company wanted, which was spend a significant amount of money on a machine that would not do very much and would only be able to work for one or two products, to actually propose, design, and build a machine that would be able to work on large scale for many things for a significant lower amount of money, which was very helpful for my co-op because obviously every company in the world loves to save money. And then for school term, it teaches you a different way of learning because obviously with Kettering we're very focused on hands-on learning through labs. I've taken so many lab classes, you'd be amazed. And with all of that, you can always like throw back to when you were in FIRST, what robots you were working on, how you did it before, but this time with a twist. You're being graded on it this time. But it's really beautiful, and I got to do so much in FIRST that has crossed directly over into my schoolwork, especially considering that in robotics, every year that I was on a team, I was about the only student doing electrical work. So I'm really good at the electrical stuff, which is really solid for half of that dual major. And then working on the mechanical part is just spending time in the shop, seeing how different ways to do things and designing things can be like worked out. So that's kind of my story. What about you, Kevin, now that you're done with it?
FIRST Robotics really prepared me for, I guess, the whole crunch time, the 6-week build period for the competition. If you've got a project or deadline, whether it's a paper or a test coming up, or if it's a work situation where you've got a deadline for a customer, it definitely made me understand a bit more what that was, so I wasn't quite thrown into the fire for my first job. I wasn't quite out of my element when I went to Kettering for my first term. I actually could, was like, oh, this is kind of similar. I can survive this a little bit and continue to improve and learn and be able to have some experience cooperating with other students, being able to be like, yes, like we both are trying to get the best grade of the class, but we both need each other's help for the studying or homework or just reminders that there's a test coming up. And that's what I would say is the biggest thing that I took away from FIRST was crunch time and friends.
So what do you plan to do in the future? Now, We know what you're doing, Kevin. We talked about that. But how does this all fit into your future plans?
I can go first. So, I have some pretty big dreams. Want to live in a mansion, want to be on the beach somewhere, you know, rocking it. Well, to do that, it's a bit of an expensive lifestyle. So, with this dual degree and everything I've done at Kettering in FIRST Robotics and every other little thing I've done in high school and in college, I've got, what would I say? Trying to figure out how to word this. You ever have a dream that you just can't figure out how to explain to someone because it's like very specific? Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of it. I'm totally blanking right now, and this is really embarrassing for me. I'm sorry, guys. Tori, you go while I think real quick, and we'll excuse this awkward pause.
I'm still envisioning a mansion by the sea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty solid picture. I'm real down for it.
So I'm kind of not so, I have two different things I'm kind of thinking of doing with, so I'm working at a biomed company, so I either want to continue pursuing that and continue my work in biomedical, and I really want to get into prosthetics is something I'd really like to do. That's if I get through my 5 years at Kettering and go, I can't take any more school, I'm done. And then I'll just go biomedical, maybe go to get my master's in that. Or I kind of really want to go into orthopedics, so I'm thinking maybe if I finish my 5 years and I still have some will, I'll go into med school and then go into orthopedics and do that, and then kind of go that way. But
And they call me a suicide major.
you're right.
Well, you follow in great footsteps because Dane Miller, who founded Biomed, which is now Biomed Zimmer, one of the largest producers of internal prosthetic joints and other components. Most people are walking around with Biomed components in them, or a lot of people are. He was an alum of the institution, and very active with the university for many years.
Okay, so
Nikki,
now
have
that
you figured it out?
now that I've figured out my life a little bit over here, hey, we all have those moments. So
And
obviously,
it gets worse with time.
oh God, oh, I gotta start writing everything down. Well, can I get this video for later? You got me, nice. So with robotics and all the time I've spent here in FIRST, I became rather passionate about it. If some of you guys have seen any of the work I've done with it, it's quite a large amount. I am at the FIRST Robotics Center at Kettering almost every other day, working or looking at robots, and this year I actually was able to ref competitions. And with what I want to do with my life, I want to go into robotics professionally, be working on it. My lovely mentor right here actually gave me a term a little while ago. I believe it was roboticist, like a robot scientist, and that sounds really cool. So that's really what I want to go into, working more on, do you guys know the company Fanuc and Fanuc Robots? They're essentially the robots that build cars. And those are the type of robots I want to be working on, precision-based, really focused. I'm not into battle bots. So that's what I want to be doing, and I would love to get as high as I could in that company. And with all the people at Kettering, I've got some very amazing mentors that I think can help me get there. And
One of the neat things about that area of robotics is that one of the senior directors of the facilities here in Michigan at Fanuc are alums of the institution. And so one of the interesting things in that area are the assistive robotics. That it was when those industrial robots were first deployed, you had these big steel cages around them with lights and kill switches and everything if you got anywhere near them, because they weren't aware of they couldn't accommodate people in that environment. But now you see this emergence of these technologies where they start to be assistive and cooperative with the human operator. That has huge. I think there's a lot of what happens in FIRST that translates to that kind of a system, which is pretty neat. And what's also interesting is one of the areas in which the university is building a lot of programs is autonomous vehicles and automation in that area, because that's actually the natural next step of a lot of things that are happening in FIRST Robotics, right? It's not that far in principle from autonomous mode to autonomous vehicle mode in some ways.
I am also currently part of the auto drive competition we have at Kettering.
That's what you want to talk about that? Auto Drive is a national competition. There were 8 universities selected in the United States to produce a level 4 autonomous vehicle, and we were one of those universities very proudly, and we have a team of students who are working on this. Have you been out on the proving ground working on them?
I haven't had a chance yet. I've been too focused studying and making sure all my classes are right where they need to be, because as much as my passions go for things I can do in my free time at Kettering, school does come first, because to do those things at Kettering, you have to be enrolled there. So, you do. So, I haven't had a lot of time, but I've been talking with the mentors, going to the classes, doing the assignments, and helping out where I can, and talking to my classmates that are in it. And I believe Dr. Peters and I have talked about me becoming one of the drivers for the vehicle, actually, because last year she said I could keep my cool.
I thought the whole idea of the autonomous vehicles was to not have a driver.
There is a small portion of the challenge where the car has to realize, it comes essentially to a barricade, and it has to realize that it doesn't know what to do, and it has to give control over. So there is a small portion where you actually have to have someone drive it.
That's cool. And we have a proving ground on campus, which the students have access to for this. And they've been out there on, because the first competition is this month, isn't it?
I believe the car is already shipped out.
Yeah. So it's out in Yuma, Arizona, and the team is going out there to compete in the first year's competition. Well, any questions from the audience, or any questions from anyone that would like to ask the panel or about their experiences or anything?
We're full of knowledge. And we don't bite.
Well, Mickey, I just want to make a comment. Tomorrow, we're actually harboring this bank over at the Imagine Michigan Fair at the event center. So they're actually providing a robot and a robot cells. So if we get a chance to come over there, we can meet the folks.
Well, I know where I'm going to be. Good to know.
We have both a display and scholarship row over there, but we're also the only university to ever sponsor the first competition as be a major sponsor. So we have a booth as well in the Innovation Fair. So is that where it's going to be?
No, it's going to be over the Ren Center.
Oh, in the RINCEN?
Yeah, down in the bottom of
Okay. Down in the, okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, did I not ask any questions that I should have asked?
I considered robotics a sport so much I had a 4-year varsity in it. Varsity jacket and everything, so.
Did you get a little,
I even have it on my class ring, like, honestly.
outstanding.
So there's something interesting for y'all.
I didn't even know you could get on classrooms.
Oh, dude, look at it. It's real cool. Anyone else wants to see it, hit me up.
What does it say? What is it about?
It's the first logo, and then it says first underneath it.
Cool. It does.
Anyone else wants to see it, seriously, just hit me up. I will be around.
Well, thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions for our panel, I want to ask you to join me in thanking the panel for all their insightful answers. And please stop by the booth over at the Innovation Fair and learn more about what's happening at Kettering. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.